Here we go. Do you know who my favorite student is? My favorite student is good old Ann Serkey. She gets everything right. It's amazing. Think about it. Think about it. Ah, someone, okay. She gets perfect on everything. It's great. So, good old Ann. You ready? Mark your own. In particular, I like question 1. I like question 1. I like question 1. Thomas, you've had me before. Why would I say that? Why would a teacher emphasize certain things? Would it be because you might see it somewhere in the future on something that begins with the letter T and rhymes with best? Okay? So if you ever hear me say, I like this question, I like this question, I like this question, I'm giving you a hint. And not only do I like number 1, I like your number 5, my number 4, your number 5. The back page. So you ready? In fact, the odds are pretty good when I make up your test for this unit. I'll take number 1 and number 5, cut and paste, change the numbers. I also like number 2, not so wild about number 3. Here we go. Express in scientific notation. So we said in scientific notation, Olivia, the rule is the decimal goes after the first digit. So I start out by going 1.23 times 10 to the. This number is bigger, so it's going to be a positive. Eric, I don't know, but I find it easier to count this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I find it easier to start right after where I'm going to put the decimal and move to the right. That might be because I'm a lefty and I tend to cover things as I write. I don't know. But whatever works better for you. B. 1 times 10 to the. It's going to be negative because we're a decimal. And again, I'm going to start at 1, 2, 3. 1 times 10 to the negative 3. 4. 4, Mr. Dewick. 4. You're moving right to there, Mr. Dewick. 4. My brain was catching it, but Patrick, you caught it. I owe you. Anytime I make a mistake, if you catch it and you're the first one to call me on it, you get a candy. Patrick was the first one. Patrick, I'll give you a candy later on in class. Make sure I don't forget. Okay? I'm going to end up there. 2.5 times 10 to the negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I was marking these on a test, I would give you half mark for the front part and then a half mark for the times 10 to the. So if you get one of those wrong, you can still get a half mark. 7.8062. Because I don't know how many sig figs, I'll write all my non-zero digits. Times 10 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1 mark for each of those. That would be out of 4. Number 2, perform the following operations on your calculator. Correct number of sig figs and give the answers in scientific notation. Okay. Are we multiplying, dividing, or are we adding, subtracting? We're multiplying and dividing. That's the easier rule, Darcy. I like it better. How many sig figs? 2. How many sig figs? 2. How many sig figs in my answer? 2. So I go to my trusty calculator. I go 5. Do I need to type 5.0? Will that make a difference at all to the actual answer I get? No. So I'm lazy. I tend to abbreviate. Scientific notation. I am not going to type times. I am not going to type 10. I'm not going to type to the power of. I'm going to go use my button. 4 times 1.6. Scientific notation button. Negative 3. How many sig figs am I going to? 2. Now this one's kind of weird. It worked out to, if I was going to write this in standard notation to 2 sig figs, I would have to do that. But they wanted this in scientific notation. So is that 2 sig figs? No. That's why I have to put that 0 there, because it was a significant figure. Times 10 to the what? If you didn't write a 1, because in math you learn if there's no exponent, it's understood that there's an invisible 1. I'm good with that. I'll put the 1 there just so it looks all scientific notation-y, but I'm not that fussy. B. How many sig figs? 2. How many sig figs? 2. How many sig figs? 2. 1.5. Scientific notation button, negative 5. And you'll notice, although I handwrite brackets when I type, if I use my scientific notation button, the brackets around it are kind of understood. My calculator knows, treat that as one thing, which is kind of nice. Divided by 3.5, scientific notation button 8. And I get, 2 sig figs. 4 point what? 3 times 10 to the negative 14. 4.3, and I know that that E means times 10 to the and at negative 14. And again, this is why I've gone on my calculator rant about how you all need to interpret your calculator. Number 3 really should be worth 2 marks in the amount of work it's going to take, but I didn't want to hammer you, so I made it worth 1 mark. We're adding. And I haven't given you one like this. This was a bit mean. We're adding scientific notation. Yes?
It says 2 marks on the sheet here.
It says, I know, I changed it again.
Oh, okay.
I gave you an older quiz. I feel stupid. I've deleted all my older quizzes. I did it this morning. I caught it yesterday. A kid came after school. Mr. Dewick, how do I do the unit conversions? And I looked at because you'll notice mine doesn't have a number 4 here. I went, what unit conversions? Didn't give you any? I must have printed and photocopied the wrong one. Okay. We said for adding and subtracting, what you need to do is rewrite it vertically. But first, I need to unscientific notation these, or the fancy phrases, you put it in standard form. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write this as 0.00075. And I'm going to write the next one as 0.000013. That's what those are in standard form. Then, Natasha, I'm going to write them vertically. So it's going to be 0.00075 plus 0.00013. See, if I do that, now it's pretty obvious. Here is where I'm missing something. I'm going to round to there. Now I go do the math. I don't round yet. I go do the actual math. 0.00075 plus 0.00013, or, I missed a 0. Or I could have typed those in scientific notation, whatever. And I get an answer back on my calculator in scientific notation. Some of your calculators might have given you this answer in scientific notation. Some of your calculators might have given you this answer in standard form. Have I gone on my rant about how you all need to interpret your calculator? So I get 0.00763. See how I kept everything all nice and lined up? Can you see it, Sydney? I'm going to round off right to there. Hey, is the 6 going to stay a 6 or become a 7? Okay, so it's going to become 0.0030, a 7, and a 6. Oh, and now they want me to put this back into scientific notation. Final answer, 7.6 times 10 to the negative 4. That's a lot of work for one question. That's why, to me, in terms of work, should be worth 2 marks, but that's tricky. How many of you got that? Nice! Nice. You're all smarter than you look. Or make that a compliment. Make that a compliment. Yeah.
Do we have to convert it from scientific notation to add it? Because I got the right answer without converting.
And you were able to do the correct sig figs? I'm impressed. Yes. It's. By the way, I actually can do all of these in my head without writing them out. I'm lying when I say I have to write. And if you get that good, great. Having said that, on a quiz or a test, I would probably still write it out to avoid making a dumb mistake. In my homework, and you're going to hear me say this over and over and over, and I will push you in your homework if you can reach the point where you can do entire questions, long questions, in your head, only on your calculator, showing no work whatsoever, and track everything and get the right answer, because I always attach the answers. That's becoming an expert. I'm good with that. I will trust that you didn't just cheat and copy the answer. I'll trust that you can do it. I think that's great. I was like a pretty high-achieving academic kid in high school, and I remember one year I had a teacher who insisted not just showing every step, but showing every half step. Like, it drove me crazy. And I argued with this teacher. I said, if I can do it all in my head, isn't that a good thing? Like, doesn't that mean I'm expert? You're slowing me down here, and I'm willing to do that as long as we understand quizzes and tests are different. You don't want to cut corners, shortcuts on quizzes and tests. Be more careful. Is that okay? I'm good with that. That speech usually comes a little later, but I just gave it now. Turn the page. Skip number 4. And when you turn the page, can you cross out number 4, make it cross out number 5, make it number 4? The questions are the same, though, I think, yes?
Back here.
Yeah. Yeah, but the numbers are the same still?
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. Did I say you had to write this in scientific notation? No. So I'll take either. I will be fussy on sig figs. If you went scientific notation, fine. If you didn't, fine. 2 sig figs. I'm going to round to 2 sig figs. 0.15 times 0.0016. Mine gives me this in scientific notation. Yours might not have. So I'm going to write 2.4, that is to 2 sig figs, times 10 to the negative 4. I would take that, or I would take 0.00024. 3 zeros, a 2, and a 4, because I didn't specify here. How many sig figs is that 40.0? 3. How many sig figs is the 30.00? 4. I'm going to go to 3 sig figs. 40 divided by 30. I didn't type the point zeros on my calculator. That's a waste of time. 3 sig figs is going to be, yeah.
I just wrote the little repeating sign. Is that wrong?
It's going to be like this. 1.33. If you put a repeating sign, you're telling me the answer is 1.33333333. Is that 3 sig figs? So can I answer your did I just answer your question? I'd be fussy on that. Okay? Okay? Yeah. 2 sig figs. I'm going to go to 2 sig figs. 5.1 scientific notation button, -5 divided by 6.0. I'm not going to type the point 0. Scientific notation button, -7. And, oh, this worked out evenly. Already to 2 sig figs. I'll take that. So if you said 85, did anybody convert that to scientific notation? Okay, 8.5 times 10 to the 1. Right. Adding and subtracting. Write them vertically. Looks like that's where I'm guessing, that's where I'm rounding to 2 decimal places. 8.124, was it plus or minus, Mr. Dewitt? Plus. 5.06, I'm rounding to the second decimal place. Is the 8 going to stay an 8 or become a 9? And I'm going to write 13.18. Did anybody do that one in scientific notation? 1.3 times 10 to the, 1.318 times 10 to the 1? Okay. E. I don't know if you remember, I said it's possible with adding and subtracting when you get good to actually do them in your head. Here's what you can, if you're looking for a way to do this in your head, do you notice this one goes 3 decimal places? 824. This one goes 1 decimal place. I'm going to round to 1 decimal place. That's really the rule. Yeah. Yeah. 1.318 times 10 to the 1? No, because now you're telling me you rounded off to there. Yeah. Yeah? Yes? The rule for math, the rule for adding and subtracting is not counting sig figs. The rule for adding and subtracting is how many decimal places? 2 decimal places. Okay? E, I'm going to go to 1 decimal place. And if you wrote it vertically, you would see that. So it's going to end up being 6.15, try that again. 615.824, take away 55.2. This column here is where I would make my guess. That's that column there. That's where I'm going to round off to. 560.6 or 560.7. Which I realize, Haley, is 4 sig figs, but you'll notice nothing there has 4 sig figs. Nothing to do with the sig figs. That's why the adding subtracting rule is trickier. The good news is, most of the time this year, we're going to be multiplying and dividing. Normally I would say to you, give yourself a little score out of 12, or yours says out of 16. Normally I'd collect these. This was your first one, so it's only for your own personal edification. Learn from your mistakes. I'm not going to count this one. Okay? Can you please get out the very end of that textbook little, where we were measuring page numbers, where you'd made some data, and then each group of, all of you are going to need a ruler, and each group of 2 is going to need a textbook again. Could you get those, please?